Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Good to have you here tonight. I applaud you for educating yourself on something so important as your financial future. Would you agree the market is a little bit unstable lately? And the economy very bleak? Don't you think it's a prudent decision to get the right information? Would everybody agree on that?
Yes. Yep.
I want to cover something. It's kind of words of wisdom I learned a long time ago. What's familiar isn't always right. What's right isn't always familiar. So if you think of that, the saving program or an investing program, what was right in the 90s? Certain things that may have panned out for some people, but it's not popular today. So what's familiar isn't always right. What's right isn't always familiar. We're going to cover a lot of that tonight. So what would you like from some of your savings or investment plans? Money Magazine came out last month.
Just say
That's the way it was, though. That's the way the market was. I'm saying. Okay. Thank you, Lance.
Good cover.
Wouldn't everybody like this? High returns with low risk. Now, there's pros and cons with each one, but I think you'd all agree high returns with low risk is a good idea. Our speaker tonight, I'm very proud to have here, he traveled from Utah. He has multiple offices throughout the country. He mentors hundreds of agents and has thousands of clients. He's been in the industry for over 25 years. He's an expert on retirement planning and estate planning. And we had a seminar here 2 nights ago. The response was overwhelming. It was great information, so I hope you take notes tonight. He'll cover some of that in a minute. Mr. Mays was at the Equitable. He helped manage the pension plan, 401k plans, retirement plans for the Oakland A's, San Francisco Giants, and Wente Wineries. I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, Mr. Lance Mays.
Thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out. I look forward to meeting each of you. A couple of you I've seen a couple of times before, and appreciate your attention tonight. If you happen to have one of these modern marvels of technology, would you please join me in turning it to the off or mute position, please? I want to make sure that we can kind of get through this as fast as we can. I appreciate that. So go ahead and turn that off if you would, please, so we can get rolling here. Restrooms, if you need to use them, they're right outside the door, and please feel free to go ahead and help yourself that way. And we will have a little chance to break a little bread afterwards. And please, if you could hold your questions until the end, that'd be great. So I'm going to cover about this much information in about this much time. And I don't think we want to stay here till breakfast, do we? So go ahead and just jot down anything that you have question-wise. And also in front of each of you is a sheet like this. And if you would be kind enough, please, to put your information on there, mostly because this proves to the IRS we bought you dinner tonight. And then it's also a sheet that if you have any other interest as we go along, we're going to cover a lot of these topics here. Go ahead and just check it off, and we'll cover either personally afterwards or we'll set up a private time to meet with you. So please go ahead and take a minute and put your name and information on there as we go along. And we'll cover things as quickly as we can. The information that we're going to cover is very applicable in many, many situations. It may not totally apply to you because your tastes and needs are a little bit different than yours and different than Steve's and different than mine, but the concept is sound, it's valid, and they make a lot of good ideas real. But the tax situation may be a little different as well. So think about it. If you go, it doesn't really apply to me, you might know somebody that it does. So think about it. And again, write down anything you have questions about as we go along. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be in the industry for a long time, which hopefully means I've been doing it right for a long time. And on top of that, I've done it in about 40 different states. Spoke to literally almost 1,000 people like yourself in rooms ranging from 20 people to 200 people at a time. Every week, I have the great pleasure of doing a radio show, and we speak to literally thousands and thousands of people then. So as I've been very fortunate to have a long career and enjoying it in this industry, lately, there's been a lot of questions and concerns, and I'm sure you probably have a few. And if I could narrow them down, some of the main questions are these. See if they are questions you might have. Retirement savings or losses, or lack thereof. Income guarantees. That's kind of a thing of the past now, isn't it? Remember we used to have a pension? I was born and raised in Iowa. And see if you've heard this mantra before. When I was growing up, it was grow up, go to school, work hard, get married, have the house, the white picket fence, the 2.3 kids, the dog, and Social Security and your pension will take care of you. How many people have heard that before? A lot of people, haven't you? But it's not a reality nowadays, is it? Because Social Security is, and pension plans are pretty much a thing of the past, aren't they? Unless you work for a government agency, they're pretty much gone. Delta Airlines, the big three, I mean, just pension after pension after pension either has been cut, eliminated, or greatly reduced. And if you have a pension, you know what I'm talking about because they change as the wind blows, doesn't it? Number 3, current and increasing taxes. How many people think taxes are going to go down? I don't really see a whoosh of hands when I ask that one. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. And uncertainty about the future, financially and economically. Would one or more of these maybe apply to you and why you were kind enough to come visit us tonight? Or maybe friends you might know? So we'll try to address these as we go along. And again, any questions that come up, just jot them down. We're happy to go over it as we go along here. But how many people would agree with this? The world, it's been a changing, hasn't it? Completely upside down. Exactly right. And weren't these the bastions of safety and the models that we look to for stability out there? Am I right? That's exactly right. Heck yeah. But what's happened to them? Washington Mutual, AIG, Fannie, Freddie, Chrysler, Lehman Brothers, either in or did go through bankruptcy, didn't they? Well, just a number of years ago, these are the ones we looked to. And because of this, we've had this. Who is the safety net? All of us, isn't it? In your pocketbook, exactly right. Now, let's talk about that a second. Fannie Mae, one of the slides we saw, and as we see right here, the biggest one out there, Fannie Mae asked for an additional $8.4 billion in addition to the $145 billion they've already got. You think there might be some restructuring needing to be done there? Or do you think that might affect us in the long run as we go forward? How about this out of the headlines? Greece and debt, a lesson for the U.S. What's happened in Greece and Europe? You know, the fact is that, like the slide said before, the world's changed. And we're a global economy now. Remember a few years ago, if something happened in Greece or China, it didn't affect us, did it? But about 18 months ago, China had a hiccup and caused one of the largest stock drops in U.S. history. So what happens overseas now affects us here. And these are things that we have to be proactive in something as important as our nest egg. Wouldn't you agree? Now, how many people out there have financial advisors right now? Most people usually raise their hand at that. Have they talked to you about the concerns worldwide to address your financial future and how it may affect you? A few of them have. Anybody that's worked with us definitely has had that talk. So, with that in mind, we have Greece, we have all the other European nations in trouble. Is it really something here? Well, in the beautiful state of California, this was on the newswire. California debt crisis. Muni bonds at risk of default. Ladies and gentlemen, California just made the top 10 list of the worst investments in the world.
Who did?
California. the state of California and its bonds.
That is a surprise.
How does that make you feel?
It all adds up.
That's right. But we are number 10, right below Greece, Dubai, Iceland, Iraq, Pakistan, the Ukraine, Argentina, Venezuela. They just said in the Wall Street Journal about 2 weeks ago that the city and county of Los Angeles is ready to default on its bonds. Orange County did it about 3 years ago. Remember PG&E defaulted on their bonds. So people that have California munis, you might want to take a closer look at it. So, there doesn't happen to be this kind of safety net for us though, does there? So what we're talking about, and again, appreciate you being here, is being proactive and trying to take prudent steps to understand how to be able to start safeguarding yourself a little more closely. So the world upside down. What happens as we go forward in the world and more credit crunches happen? If you're an investor in companies, or you work for a company still, if they don't have the capital to expand, to reinvest, to invest and grow, what happens? Stagnation, and they go backwards if anything. How's it going to affect you if more companies go bankrupt nationwide, worldwide? How does that affect your portfolio? What if you work for one of them? Subprime mortgages, we just saw the Fannie and Freddie information. That was a pretty big topic. It really drug us all down, didn't it? And then the seconds came along and started to adjust. That was the one shoe, so to speak, falling. But what a lot of people aren't speaking about is something every one of you sees every day. When you drive around, don't you look around and you go, hey, wasn't there so-and-so's business over there? And that place is empty. And oh my gosh, look what's happened over here. Isn't the sign of the times for rent, for sale, and foreclosure? Unfortunately. Remember we had a moratorium even on foreclosures in the state of California. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's still over 2 million homes that haven't even been filed on yet. How is that going to affect just this state as well as the rest of the housing market? And if we have the homes to worry about, the old line, the other shoe to fall, we happen to think it's going to be a pair of hip waders full of water falling is the commercial real estate market. Because all those empty buildings, somebody still has the note on that property, don't they? And there's a lot of properties out there. And if the homes affected you or the economy, how is that going to affect you? Think about it. Low interest rates, unemployment, oil change rates, wars overseas, all of these things. And here's one that a lot of people don't really think about. Natural disasters. We just had an earthquake in Southern California today. 4.0. We have our own wildfires. We have our own earthquakes. The South has hurricanes and has the Gulf oil spill. And then we've got wildfires and more earthquakes and hurricanes and Katrinas and all these different things. Who pays for that? Does the Natural Disaster Ferry come and just give us a check? It doesn't, does it? Comes from who? All of us. Not to mention the fact that on a Sunday night, the Fed came and opened up its checkbook to the European Union, so it wouldn't be reported on TV. They're bailing them out to the billions of dollars. What about us? Think about that. Now let me ask you a question. Does any one of these things up here affect you? Can you control any one of these things up there? If they affect you and you can't control it, doesn't it make sense to start looking at ways to be able to hedge your position in different areas? To brace yourself for possible more economic turmoil. Now, did I leave anything out? Besides other countries telling us we better get our house in order or else. The people that own the most debt of the U.S. Did I leave anything out? How about this? Now, I hate to dwell on it, but it's a fact of life nowadays, isn't it?
That started everything.
It drove a stake through the heart of the economy, no doubt about it.
Those are some of the big
National-
ones. but
National
main
poll, national poll showed that 97% of Americans out of 100 surveyed believe that there'll be some sort of major activity, terrorist activity on our shores again. Now, what happens if that happens in San Francisco or Los Angeles? Well, heck, we just had the thing in New York City, didn't we? This was the bomber, just went on trial 2 days ago, and he says, I will plead guilty 100 times over. So their goal is to come out and destroy us. We have to be 100% right, 100% of the time, and 100% of the bus stations, the train stations, the boat, cruise ships, the airlines, all across the world. That's a big order to make sure we try to guarantee that, isn't it? But if one or two of those happen again, like almost downtown New York City, how is that going to affect the rest of the economy? Can your portfolio withstand that? Because the one thing that a lot of people aren't grasping, because remember, like you had said, Dave, a minute ago, that it started a lot of the whole things.
Oh, yeah, everything.
What about the fact that before that time, you could have a blind, retarded monkey pick out a stock or a portfolio or something, and eventually it would do okay, wouldn't it? It would go. But what changed? The world changed. We are the global economy now. And so we have to be able to understand that the information prior to this time is completely useless. You really have to think about it. So when your broker holds up a thing and says, well, historically this does this and this does this, and we'll think about that. Okay. Since then, everything's pretty well been down. It's been well over 10 years almost now, hasn't it? Think about that. So the data is no longer relevant. And then we have data like this. These small little numbers right here. Until you realize that's what they actually mean. Not including the 8.4 billion additional. Oh, and by the way, did you know that they did not include the bailouts for Fannie and Freddie in these numbers? Who pays for it, ladies and gentlemen? All of us. How's that going to affect your Social Security and your retirement? See, who is guaranteeing your retirement? Hopefully you are. And if not, that's why I hope you came here, to learn tools to be able to be proactive in protecting something as important as your retirement. You see, it used to be the greatest generation. Some of the people in the room, Tom Brokaw said it, and before the golden age, was, again, that dream I said, Social Security, work hard, your pension and Social Security, that's what this was about. And so many people had that. But see, now retirees and baby boomers going forward are having to be faced with things like benefits in Social Security that aren't guaranteed past. You everybody get one of these, by the way? Around your birthday? Little birthday card from the government? This is Frank's, by the way. Everybody gets one.
What is it?
And it says right here in black and white and green. In 2016, we begin paying more in benefits than we collect in taxes. Without changes, by 2037, the Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted, and we will pay less than 76 cents on each dollar to you. When the government tells you something's going to happen to you, and you're not a big company, you might want to start listening, huh? How about the other things that we're being faced with in retirement? Having to be managing our own accounts and be responsible for them. Because 401ks and IRAs for a lot of people is languages they don't understand. And a lot of double talk and legalese and long spread out different terminologies out there. And because of that, so many people are not totally understanding the investment and savings risks or benefits that their accounts can actually have. Now, we feel one of the most important things that we can do as members of our society is help you understand that. Warren Buffett said it best, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. And Adam has a favorite line that I like. Warren Buffett also said, you see who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. And a lot of companies are right now, aren't they? You're actually seeing how many hands are in the cookie jar, how many crafty and shady things are being done. How many of you were trained as professional money managers, investment advisors? But yet you're being asked to manage and make life-changing decisions on your portfolios. So again, I applaud you for taking time to come down and meet us tonight and talk with us. And like I said, we follow this philosophy. Will Rogers, the great statesman, once said, I'm more concerned about the return of my money than the return on my money. How many people would agree with that? How many people do you know that has lost money that would take a 0% rate of return right now just to have their money back? Every single one of them, right?
I'm one.
Yeah. I like it like this. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead and have a good cry. And then we'll decide where to put the rest of your money. That's the way it's been lately, isn't it?
Did you see the one with the guy with the tie?
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is it that you really want? Isn't peace of mind a little bit more important than return on your money that way? Isn't peace of mind quality of life? Because literally, if you made an extra 20 or 30% on your portfolio and you're in retirement, are you going to go out and buy a bigger house or a bigger car? You might take another trip or two, but most likely you're going to keep it and maintain your standard of living, aren't you? But what if you lose 20 or 30 or 40% of your portfolio? Is that going to alter your standard of living? Most definitely so. So we feel peace of mind is quality of life, sleep insurance, if you will. So we feel our real first primary importance is working with people and helping them understand and analyze and explain the risks within your current programs and portfolios, because so many people do not. And for this part of it, I want to bring up my radio co-host, Adam Curran. He's been working on the Philadelphia Stock Exchange floor since he was 18 years old. He has been managing billion-dollar hedge funds. Adam, why don't you come up and share a little bit about some of this, and then we'll get into some other things. Adam Curran, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Lance and I do a radio show. It's called Wall Street Meets Main Street. And a couple months ago, a guy called up and said, you know, you guys should change the name of your show to Wall Street Eats Main Street. And I never laughed so hard on air in my entire life, because the guy hit the nail right on the head. Doesn't it seem like Wall Street and all the financial institutions would like to have you believe that the stock market is just far too complex and far too difficult for Main Street investors to understand? And just give us all the money, we'll take care of you, don't worry about a thing, and you're in great hands with us. And one of the things Lance and I do on the radio show is kind of talk about some of this quote-unquote majestic things that are going on in the market and how they're not that complex. And now would be a good time to start taking some notes, because I'm going to shed light on every single thing that you see on TV. When you see the talking babies talking and all the different Wall Street commercials that you see, there's only 3 ways to make money. There's only 3 ways to make money out there. One of which is a fixed rate of return. Now, anyone have any examples of fixed rate of return? Certificates of disappointment. Very good. Excuse me. Certificates of deposit. Back in the 1960s, the banks created these instruments to finance mortgages and small business loans and give out toasters. There used to be this beautiful business model the banks had. It was called 363 banking. They would give interest on their CDs at 3%. They would write mortgages where they'd earn 6%. And then they would go to the golf course by 3 p.m. It was that simple. They were very profitable. They made a lot of money doing that. Fast forward 60 years, here we are. We have retail banks combining their operations with their investment banks. And now we have a world upside down. And we have some of these pillars of our society going out of business. What's another example of a fixed rate of return? Fixed annuities. These are products very similar to the certificates of deposit. They're offered by the insurance companies. Generally, you have to lock up your money a little bit longer than with a CD, but they give you a little bit more return on them. Another fixed rate of return is government bonds, the safest investment of all. No laughs? Usually I get a couple snickers when I say that, but I would argue with you till I'm red in the face that they very much are the safest investment in that column. Why? Because if banks go out of business, who backs the banks up?
The government.
No, the FDIC. What does the FDIC stand for? Insurance Corporation. The insurance companies back the banks, but if the insurance companies go out of business, what happens then?
They get bailed out by the federal government.
The federal government, and then we're actually the safest.
Well, I have a question real quick. The FDIC, they didn't have enough money to bail out the banks when they were going down. So the government had to step in and throw in a lot of extra money on top.
I'll talk to you all about the FDIC and how levered they are, and a lot of people are very concerned about that. However, there has been no failures with the FDIC, and the government has yet to have to come in and bail out many insurance companies. Generally, they're just mending operations. But I will talk to you at length about that. Now, what's good about this column here? There is good things. It's awfully safe, isn't it? But what's bad about it? No growth, exactly. Now let's go to the other side of the room here, and a market rate of return. Buy, 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 sell, sell, sell. Do you guys watch Jim Cramer much? What's in this column? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Real estate. Now, I just read recently that Santa Rosa is one of the most hot real estate markets on the face of the earth. What article was that? I think it was last time, about a month ago, there was an article saying Santa Rosa has the best growth prospects in the entire nation. They're saying the real estate market here is going to go up about 7% next year. Now, that's not much to sleep easy about, seeing as many of these real estate properties have dropped 30-40%. But you better believe real estate is involved in a market-related sequence there. Gold. The listeners of Lance and I's radio show are a very conservative bunch. We get a lot of calls saying, put all your money into gold. And at the end of our presentation, we're going to have a booth set up in the back, and if you have any gold jewelry, we'll give you cash. You better believe that gold is a market-driven investment. On the trading floor, when I used to work, one of the things they would say is gold takes the stairs up and the elevator down. So once the sun comes back up, and believe you me, Lance and I have talked about this at length. A lot of times people say, you guys are awfully pessimistic. We believe in American ingenuity. We believe that the stock markets will eventually rebound and will recover. We're just telling you to understand what's out there, what you own, what it can do for you, and more importantly, what it can't do for you. But gold is a market-driven investment. Another one is variable annuities. These are incredibly controversial products. I know one of you out there probably owns a variable annuity. I read an article that they said these products are being sold like fake Gucci handbags on a New York City street corner. Wildly sold products, sold under the impression that you can't lose any money in these. A lot of times when we sit down with you and we talk about what your variable annuity, what the little intricacies and features of it, a lot of times these products have fees to the tune of 5%. How are you supposed to make any money if you're giving your broker 5% a year? And people are just astonished when they really see what these products are made of. But what's good about these products? They make some money, right? Great upside, but what's bad? Very, very risky. Anything that gets traded in a market, no matter how stable you may believe it is, has a great deal of risk involved in it. Back in the early 90s, stock market was flying through the roof. Where do you think everyone was putting their money? Do you think that they were putting it with the banks and the government and the fixed annuity companies?
Real estate.
Absolutely not. They were putting it into real estate, they were putting it into the stock market, not so much gold, but they were putting in these variable annuities as well. So the banks and the government and the insurance companies had to come up with products that garnered a little more attention. So they created these linked accounts. And there they are. Banks, 10 years ago, used to be able to walk up your bank teller and ask for an equity-linked CD, a CD that was tied to the rate of the stock market. There are still a handful of banks that offer these. In fact, I had the great responsibility of managing my mother's hefty retirement account of $10,000, and a lot of pressure there. A lot of pressure marrying your mother's retirement account. Didn't want to lose a nickel, so I put her money into an equity-linked CD. And she couldn't be more happy. The annuity companies, or the insurance companies, came out with a product called a fixed index annuity that Lance will talk about at a little more length. And lastly, Treasury inflation protected securities. Now, I saw a lot of you guys said you had financial advisors. If they haven't shared this product with you, go up to them and say, hey, why don't I own any of these Treasury inflation protected securities? Certainly if you owned a lot of bonds in your portfolio. What they do is they'll pay you a set interest rate, and then whatever this consumer price index does, whatever inflation is, they'll pay you a premium on top of that interest rate. It's a great vehicle to stabilize a portfolio full of bonds. Now, what you're going to gain from this column is some potential growth with no risk. But the moral of the story is, none of these products are perfect. None of them. None of them are useless either. Our job, and what we want you to know, is that these products all exist, and it's a matter of finding the right balance in all the different columns to accomplish what you need to be accomplished. Because unfortunately, the way our business is working right now, there's a great deal of conflicts of interest. If you work at one of the brokerage houses, you put all your money in this column, the market column. Now, if you're at the banks, we want to see all your money in this column here. There's a great deal of conflict of interest, and we'll shed some light on all the products under the sun to serve what you're trying to accomplish.
Thanks, Lenny. Appreciate it. And ta-da! That's all there is, ladies and gentlemen. Anything more than that is all smoke and mirrors by Wall Street. They try to make it so ethereal, I guess is the word. But a lot of people still can't grasp exactly what that is. How many people have mutual funds? A few of you do. How many people know a guy named Robert Kiyosaki? Okay. There's an article from him on the Rich Dad Poor Dad series. Brilliant man. And this particular article, I just was fascinated with. Because a lot of people will say to me when Adam and I talk with them, well, that's great. I've got some mutual funds. I have Vanguard. No load mutual funds. And I go, good for you. Congratulations. That's great. Let's see. Kiyosaki says, this past Christmas I was at a party and a man about 10 years older than me asked me what mutual funds I invested in. My reply was, none. I rarely invest in mutual funds because of the lack of transparency. I don't know their fees and their hidden expenses, and they don't need to disclose them to investors. He later interviewed a man named John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. On the TV show Frontline, he was asked the question, what percentage of my net growth is going to fees? Bogle's answer was, it's awesome. Of the no-load fees. Now, if you aren't familiar with how a mutual fund works, Kiyosaki goes on, and let me just give you the Reader's Digest version here. The mutual fund companies put up 0% of the capital. They take 0% of the risk, but they take 80% of the return. You put up 100% of the capital, assume 100% of the risk, but only get 20% of the actual return. Sign me up for that kind of company, huh? In other words, the longer you invest in the investment house, the more it makes. That's why the financial institutions suggest you invest for the long term. Because they make more money in the long term. Oh, here's a great one. New York Times article. See if this rings a bell. In its latest investigation of the tawdry practices of financial markets, the New York State Attorney General revealed this week that some mutual fund companies have been making secret, illegal deals that benefit the big in-and-out traders. Does that sound like a headline of last week? Or maybe last month? It was actually September 5th, 2003. Same stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Different day. They aren't changing a thing at your expense. So what we're trying to do is help you really understand what you have. Because if you have a mutual fund or a stock, you get something like this, don't you? A little prospectus. How many of you actually read them?
Try.
Maybe one or two, or try, or it's a great cure for insomnia. But this is an actual mutual fund from one of our clients. And take a look at all these little slivers of pie here. Okay, you see that? Everybody see that? Every single one of those little slivers has its own prospectus with it. And Phil, you know what? If it loses money and you lose every penny you put in, it's your fault. You know why? Because they told you in the prospectus it may lose money. And it could. And it's not their fault if it does. So it's your fault you didn't understand it and read it. That's the way Wall Street is about these things. They have no responsibility to you other than give you something to put money into. So what we do is, should you want an independent analysis of what you currently have, we'll sit down with you. We'll take a look at what you have. Just basically ask some information about you and give you a report card on how you're doing on an independent basis. If you look around this room, there's no company sponsoring us. There's no ABC, XYZ, LMNOP company pumping money into us to promote their products. Unlike if you had a Merrill, a Schwab, a Morgan, or whoever. Or a Washington Mutual, not anymore, of course, US Bank, B of A, or whatever. We're completely independent. We have no allegiance to anything. What works best for you is going to work best for her. We want to find out what it is you need, and we'll give you an independent analysis of where you are, and then help you actually get there with a blend. Because like Adam said, not any one of these things is good, and not any one of them is bad, but balanced upon what you're trying to accomplish is going to be a good mix. That'll give you a good balance of safety. And a couple of you have been working with us already, and I hope you can relate to that, right? So what does this line represent? Well, this is from 64 to 2008. That's actually what CDs were paying. And what you don't see about a CD, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Look at it. By the time your money's in there, over the past 30 years, the real rate of return, by the time you factor in inflation and taxes, is negative more than half the time. CDs are fine for a short-term place to put money over and above a checking account. But for leaving it long-term, it comes out to be this. We'd like to roll over the CD. What's your new rate? At the end of the year, you owe us 1.5%. And they don't even give you a toaster anymore, do they? Here's another line. Again, that is the 10-year treasuries. Remember at the beginning of the year, what was their whopping payout? 0. But is 0 bad, or is 0 going to be your hero? Because didn't we all agree that what Will Rogers said made sense? I'm more concerned about the return of my money than the return on my money. And yes, this is the S&P, a 20-year snapshot in time. And what you don't see is you took all that risk for a 5% rate of return, not including fees and expenses. Especially if you happen to get in here and you needed it here. Or like here where it is today. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, that's one of the things we try to work with you on, helping you understand that, what you have, what it can and can't do for you. What we feel our second responsibility is help you avoid the big mistake. What's the big mistake? For us, it's when you go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Hindsight's 20/20, isn't it? Or, why didn't I do that? These are things that you need to think about. So what we'll do is we'll talk with you, and what we found overall, if we could take a magic wand and go, poof, what is it you really want? This is kind of what everybody has said. Something that's safe, secured, insured, compounded on a tax-advantaged basis with liquidity that offers market-like returns without risk to our previous year's earnings. Would that be something awesome? Wouldn't that make sense? We could have something like that. Well, how many of you have your portfolio on a roller coaster? This is off the close of business today. The market was down another 145 points, down to 10,1052. Everything was down again. Adam and I strongly believe that the market is still greatly overinflated. How do you feel about the market? We happen to think it's going to go as low as 8,800. If you look at it on a national and world stage, there's nothing to even support it to be at the 10,000 level right now. And it's been down to 9. Actually, you know what? If you look at the 52-week range on this thing, I'm not too far off. The 52-week range is 8,057 to a high of 11,000. So it's very realistic to be back down around the 8,800 figure again, especially with all the new things that have happened. So, I happen to have a very beautiful and intelligent 13-year-old daughter. And she is a stock market genius. I had her on the show last week. And she says, Dad, I can tell you what the stock market's going to do. It goes up, it goes down, and it goes up. Oh, come on, that was funny. We all think our daughters and sons are great. But isn't that true, though? That's how simple it really is. So what if we can have access to a product for part of our portfolio, for some of our dollars, that when the market does this, we do this. But we give up maybe that little bit of spread. That little bit of spread guarantees that what goes up, what? Must come down. So that when the market comes down, our account does that. And when the market goes back up, we do that. But we give up that little bit of spread. Would you give up a little bit of a spread to make sure you never took any losses? Think about that. If you can capture the majority of the upside without the downside for some of your money, that makes sense. Does it exist? It does. It's called a fixed indexed annuity. And here's how it looks. This actually is a lady's account. September 30th, 1998, she put in $100,000. This is a 10-year snapshot. The red line is actually the S&P. The market went up, gave up a little spread, remember? Market went up, gave up a little spread. Market went down. Her account held solid. How many people remember General Patton? He had a famous saying, of course, the blood and gut speech, but forward, always forward, never retreat. I don't want to pay for the same real estate twice. It's too expensive. I don't want to pay for the same real estate twice. It's too expensive. And this is through 2009. This is actually her account. The S&P, which is like the spider's accounts and the index accounts, and her account. You never go backwards. This will offer you a guaranteed rate of return. They'll guarantee a portion of the growth as it goes up. You can index it like the S&P, the Dow, the NASDAQ. Some of them index to the FTSE, the Hang Seng. A lot of different indexes. You give up just a little bit of the spread to be able to have that kind of safety with your money when you need it. Oh, let's go back to this part here a second. I forgot to tell you about this. Are they popular? Do people know about them? Well, the business record from the Des Moines Register says why I love my fixed annuity. This was our sheet we had. Wall Street Journal, inflation protection you can't get in search of an indexed annuity. How many people have heard of Wharton Financial Business College? They went out and started looking at this product very closely to try to poke holes in it. And after this much investigation and work, they thought it was one of the greatest things they ever seen for being able to protect your money. And we have this available for you, by the way. 16 reasons why your accountant prefers equity indexed or fixed index annuities over mutual funds. financial underwriter. Index annuities may be the perfect product. From the New York Times, the unloved annuity gets a hug from Obama. In a report from the administration's middle class task force, they are recommended as one of the tools the administration is promoting to give Americans a better shot at a more secure retirement. They're telling you to start taking care of yourself. Put it in things that are going to perform for you. The Fed chair, Ben Bernanke. Every year, people have to disclose what they have when they're in office. The Fed chief's largest assets last year were 2 annuities. It's good enough for the guy that runs the economy. Okay. So how would it have worked overall in the past? Well, there's a guy called Jack Marion, and he's an industry analyst. He writes for the Wall Street Journal from time to time, and he overlaid this over different periods of time to see how they would perform. And even during the Great Depression, which ended at 65% lower than when it started, you would have had a positive 6.4% rate of return during the Great Depression. And we have this available for you too. How many people know who she is?
Can't stand her, but I know who she is.
Yeah. Let's see what she says about it, though. Can you read this pretty loud for us, everybody? Yep.
No, I can't.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Steve, can you read this pretty loud for everybody?
How do I know if the index annuity is right for me? If you do not want to take any risk but still want to play the stock market, a good index annuity may be right for you.
Not bad. Lance, I bought an annuity from my broker. I bought one from my bank. Well, ladies and gentlemen, those are called variable annuity. And let's see what she says about those. Can you read this one, Steve?
The word variable must be there.
Exactly.
My financial advisor is recommending that I buy a variable annuity with my retirement account. What should I do?
And her answer?
Drop back 10. Get yourself another financial advisor.
Oh, here's another one from her. It says, one investment you should avoid. My financial planner wants to put a large sum of my money in a flexible premium variable annuity. I'm a bit skeptical, not real crazy about the large fees. What are your thoughts? She says, well, how can I say this politely? Actually, I can't, so let me be blunt. This is horrible financial advice. Variable annuities are at the top of my list of worst investments ever. So it's not me telling you these things, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to give you the tools to start looking at ways to safeguard and be proactive, because the worst thing that's ever going to happen is you get a 0 one year. All of your principal, all of your gains are 100% guaranteed. And oh, by the way, I work with them very closely. No one's lost their principal. No one's ever lost their gains that are locked in. Some are so liquid they come with checkbooks. They accomplish triple compounding. There's no probate with them. They bypass that. And they can be converted to an income stream you can never outlive. It makes a lot of sense for people to look at a little more closely for money they don't want to lose. If you want to find out more about that, on that little sheet you can write on there. There's a little box on there. I'd like to find out more about that. Our third responsibility, we feel, is help you, after you've made your money, keep it. Give less to the government. Not a bad idea, is it? So, manage your situation for the benefit of your family, either for your retirement or your estate. Well, how many taxes do we pay? Oh my gosh. We have tax upon tax upon tax upon tax. I think there's taxes on taxes, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
So, what about if this goes into effect? Oh my gosh, we're really something. But one of the taxes we can maybe do a little something about is your Social Security tax. If you are receiving Social Security, a lot of people don't realize that it's all based upon what's called your AGI, your adjusted gross income. And the AGI looks like this. It's different if you're single or if you're married. Started in '83. They said, you seniors have too much money, we need some of it. And by the way, they gave themselves a raise and taxed the seniors. If you make $1 over that amount, your Social Security is taxed at 50%. Then, if that wasn't bad enough, the Omnibus Reconciliation came into effect. And in 1993, you greedy seniors had too much money. We need to take more of it. If you make $1 more, it's now taxed at 85%. But Lance, I have tax-free muni bonds. I have a tax-free distribution. Congratulations. But guess what? On line 8A of your tax return, it says, how much did you receive in tax-free bonds and tax-free income, which gets added to everything else and still counts to this. So what we try to tell people is that if you're not using it to live on, let's look at other ways to do something with it. Because Rockefeller, pretty rich guy, don't pay tax on money you're not using. So if you've got bonds and CDs and you're not using the money to live on, let's look at other alternative methods. Because if you have a simple CD that paid you just a $200 $10.99 at the end of the year, and you went up over this amount, that $200 you gained is wiped out. So, another expert. How many people have heard of a guy named Ed Slott? He has the #1 rated show on PBS in the history of PBS. He has a series out there. He's a national expert on how to make your IRA last more, longer, better, and the most tax-efficient ways to be able to deal with it. Right now, he says taxes are on sale. Let me put it this way. I was married before, and my wife would come home with bags and bags full of stuff. Okay? And I said, honey, I thought we were trying to save some money here. And she goes, I saved you so much money today. This was all on sale. Well, if you can buy something at 40% off, it's not a bad deal, is it? If you're going to use it, exactly right. Well, right now, ladies and gentlemen, we all agree taxes are going to do what? So right now, they're on sale. So if you have a highly appreciated asset, it makes sense to look at converting it this year, because next year it goes up. And oh, by the way, I work closely with him too. One of the things that we can talk about, another tool, is maybe if you want to look at converting your IRA into a Roth. Now, a Roth, if you're not familiar with it, it's another IRA vehicle that allows all the growth inside of it to be tax-free and the distributions tax-free, and you're not forced to take what's called the RMD, the required minimum distribution. So if it makes sense to you, I'll explain it another way this way. I tell you, I was from Iowa, remember, very agricultural area. If you were all going to be farmers and you went out to the feed store and you bought a big bag of seed, would you rather pay tax on the seed you just bought, or would you rather pay tax on the bounty of the entire harvest out there after you planted it? What converting to a Roth is paying tax on the bag of seed, and the entire bounty is tax-free. Is it going to make sense for you? I don't know. If you want to find out, check off that box, and we'll see if we can run the numbers for you, and if it makes sense or not. So let's explain it another way with IRAs. Richard and Susan, nice couple. Richard and Susan, Richard had a nice job, accumulated a nice IRA. Everybody see this okay? $350,000. Now the plan was to just take the RMDs, live off that, and if something happens to them, pass it on to the kids, maybe his son and daughter, and then the grandchildren or something. Sounds like a lot of people would like to do that, wouldn't they? Do that or enjoy it, but if you happen to meet the cement mixer, that's where you want it to go. Richard and Susan met the cement mixer. They had a trust. Okay? How much of that $350,000 went to the children? First answer everybody says is, well, it's their money. They had a trust. All of it.
About half.
Any trust. But what people don't realize is this money in the IRA hasn't been taxed. And if the children are out earning a living, and even only making $50,000 or $60,000 a year, and they get $170,000, they're automatically up in the top tax brackets, aren't they? So I'm going to put this number down here, and I'll come back to it. Automatically, they get taxed 39%. And we live in the great state of California. So guess what? We have to pay income tax as well, but not on what's left, on the original amount. 9.8. Let's just call it 10%. So in one day, 49% goes to the government. How's that make you feel? What took you 60 or 70 years or 80 years to accumulate goes to your favorite relative, Uncle Sam. Now the reason I put this up is, I had a trust. And the number one mistake that I see when we review trusts is that the attorneys are trying to be so careful that they make the trust the beneficiary of the estate and the IRA. What happens is it automatically defaults to the highest tax rate as a company, as a business type of, not an individual. And then, as the distributions go to the children, it's taxed again as income to them. The good news, Richard and Susan lived. Lived very happily. He took just the RMDs over his life, took out $300,000. Passed away in his sleep. Susan survived him by 4 years, the national average. And she took out that amount. Then what was left over was stretched to the children and the grandchildren. So that $350,000 in the right vehicle, handled the right way, with the right handling, translates into $1.7 million in distributions. Now, is that a little better legacy than that? Looks like this. Before, after, and done correctly. I'll give you another graph. Making sure you understand this is that we want to make sure we guarantee the principal, make sure we understand that we can guarantee a minimum rate of return, and administer it to all the beneficiaries. Banks and brokerage houses will not, with no fee. How about providing a binding beneficiary document that makes sure that the children, what took you 70 or 80 years to accumulate, doesn't go away in 7 months? Looks like this. If you put your IRA into one of those annuity products we were talking about, and your RMD is only 4%, could be more, could be less, for example, you've only got to earn 4% to kind of what? Keep it stagnant, right? To live off the interest. That's kind of the idea. Not so tough to do. But if you leave it in the brokerage account, same 4%, we're doing an apples-to-apples comparison here. Management fees and commissions average 2 to 3% nationally. So that means now you've got to earn 7% per year in any market to try to keep that stagnant, don't you? A little tough to do over the last few years, isn't it? So let's take a look. And we're going to make sure that the children get the money and stretch it, same apples to apples. At this time, they'll be able to pass it on to each of the children and the grandchildren in those dollar amounts. Same. Okay? I'm going to say they'll be able to keep that 7% here. Now, Lance, $970 isn't a lot to give to a kid. Well, if you're the grandfather or grandmother and you want to give something to your grandchildren, how about after you've been gone, still for the next 20 years, on their birthday, they get a check for $970. Is that a legacy to pass on to your grandchildren? Think they'll remember you? Every year. So what I'm saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, is this. If this appeals to you, and you choose to keep your money in your brokerage account, you love your children less than you love your broker, because he makes more money than all four of them combined. Every year, whether the market goes up or goes down. Choice is yours. What would you rather do? Have up to half your money go to the IRS? Give more to your broker than your kids? Or create a legacy that you could feel good about, not a burden. And know the peace of mind that the government's not going to be taking it away. If you want to find out more about that, that's called a stretch IRA. How many people have brokers again, and how many of them have covered that with you? Not really a lot, huh? It would be important to chat with us. We feel our fourth responsibility is help people guarantee peace of mind that income forever can do. How long will your retirement last? How long will your income last? Well, the question is, how long are you going to last? Maybe some of you saw this on the news. This is Curly. His name's Larry, actually. And he outlived his savings twice. He's 107. And still going strong. They're taking up donations to be able to help him continue to stay where he's living. You know, it's like I said, how long are you going to last? Well, if you're already 65, these are the kind of percentages of chances you're going to make it into your 90s. And if you make it into your 90s and you retire in your 60s, do you realize that you've been retired almost as long as you worked? And if you had trouble making ends meet when you were working, how's it going to be when you can't? Doesn't it make sense to guarantee some of that money and an income? Is the retirement you have guaranteed? Well, let's give you one other example. We'll get through this quickly. Joyce and Bill, they had Social Security, a little bit of money coming in on stipend. They needed $2,000 a month to help make ends meet. Pretty standard for a lot of people in retirement. Their broker says he's going to get them an 8% rate of return. And I'm going to say he can. Yes, he can. But, how about this? When is an 8% rate of return not an 8% rate of return? This is the first year. Let's say it was 2010. Only a 10% correction, not the 38% correction we've had. They still needed the same money to live, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's left. Now, I'm going to say over the next 9 years, there's only one more down year, which has never happened, by the way. And it was only down by another 10%. Look what's left. If I start with $200,000, they're out of money in the 8th year. If nothing else tonight, I want you to take this away from here. Losses hurt you more than gains ever help you. If I have $100 and I lose 30% of it, how much do I have left? $70. Now the first answer that comes to mind, I gained 30%, what do I have? Most people think, well, I got my $100 back. 91. It takes a 43% gain just to get back to zero. How many times has the market gone down over 30%? 19 in the last 50 years. How many times has it gone up over 40? Something to think about when you want to talk about a permanent income. So the 4 areas that we help you with is help analyze and understand what you actually have, what it will do for you. Find a solution that helps you avoid the big mistake and gives you that peace of mind. Manage your tax situation so you get to keep more of what you work so hard to get. And develop a guaranteed lifetime income plan if that's something you want. Pretty simple, isn't it? Because there's only problem is so many people procrastinate. and there's two areas we shouldn't. Like most, we want to get a second opinion on our health. Phil, if the doctor says I need to amputate that arm tomorrow, what are you going to do? You're probably going to get a second opinion, aren't you? Especially if it's your eye doctor. So we understand that most people have advisors. But how many of them covered the stuff that I did tonight? How many ever sat down and explained the risks within your existing portfolio? If they haven't, maybe you should chat with us a little more. Would it make prudent sense to get a second opinion? We think so. So do the thousands of people nationwide we talk to. We are specialists in the area of retirement and estate planning. And how do we work? Well, quite simply, we sit down and meet with you. We've got a couple people in here. How do we work with you? Do we just sit down? You ask questions, we chat, try to see what areas make the most sense, didn't we? There's no pressure with it at all. Just if it makes sense, it makes sense. And we'll either do this. We come up and say, Steve, you know what? You've done a heck of a job. Congratulations on all you've done, buddy. Maybe you can refer us to some people that haven't. Or, you know what? There might be some areas of concern here we should look at a little closer. They're not doing what you said you really wanted to do. So maybe we should look at that a little closer. That's it. We talk to you about your concerns. Estate preservation, tax reduction, probate and legal. We work with fine teams of legal people all across the U.S. One of the areas that a lot of people aren't familiar with and is a great estate planning tool is reverse mortgages. Now, don't think, oh, it's not for me. Let me put it in this context. How many people do you know that have people that have gone into a nursing home? Kiplinger's magazine says 50% of the people in America are going to need some sort of long-term care. So that means basically that this half of the room is going to go into a nursing home. Average cost, between $5,000 and $7,000 a month. If you don't have long-term care insurance, who pays for it? Oh wait, this is California. No one ever gets sick or hurts or dies here, do they? So how long can you write a check for $5,000 or $6,000 a month before you run out of money? And then if you run out of money, you're still going to need care. Who's going to take care of you? Well, the state will step in. And if you happen to own a house, the state knows that. And they file a lien on it. It's called the Estate Recovery Act. And they're going to get their money back. So a reverse mortgage, people can live in the house, get their cash out now, enjoy it, and the state can only attach that much. So for a lot of people, it's a prudent estate planning tool to make sure you can pass on a legacy to the family. Or just have the cash you need to be able to afford your own health care, to live on your own terms. Think about it. We'll talk to you about the market and how to protect yourself. And basically evaluate your overall risk and exposure. And one of two things are going to happen. Either you're going to say, yeah, that makes a heck of a lot of sense, or, you know what, thanks, I think I'm pretty good. But to find out, I'd like you to take on this, jot down anything you want to find out more about on an individual basis. We're happy to chat with you afterwards or set a time to come to your home or you want to come to the office. No obligation, completely free to sit down and get a second opinion. On behalf of people that invited you here and myself, I want to thank you very much for attending tonight. Thank you all.